A sonnet of character I hereby proclaim. Hickory Diamond is my given name. And with this historynomy I aim to explain the breadth of my plight and who is to blame. This blighted place where skarken are rife, no solace is given, only unyielding strife. I'm stuck in a land with hopeless surrender, with the slaughter of hordes, my emphatic agenda. I don't want your pity, I seek no great glory. Just like and subscribe and follow my story. I'll take you on thrills with no equal rival when I challenge this game in a fight for survival. But I'm Hickory Diamond and this is my mission. Survive this incursion without submission. But it's somebody's fault that I'm in this place. And in this place there is no trace of the human race. And I know the truth of my hopeless plight. Hunt by day and hide by night. The food I find is sparse and bland. I do long for my home at the Hawking clan. I've built a refuge, but it's not a home. These past 30 days that I've spent alone, I have seen some friends, and I do see them still, but the friends that I see, I still have to kill. And the other skarken, they're not my friends, so I'll give them slow and torturous ends. I know that it's a fact, I'm here to stay. I'd like to go home, but there's no possible way. I've grown quite numb to the killing, it's a tale of woe, and though I'm not willing, I battle friend and foe. I bludgeon them all, and at home, that's a crime, but here, I survive one day at a time. This place could be fine, it can be quite nice, and it's been so long, 30 grim days to be precise, and now this is just another day in paradise. Ta-da! How cool was that? Don't answer that, I'm not really interested in soliciting your approval. I'm quite capable of tooting my own trumpet, thank you. And I know where you went with your dirty mind there. You're thinking of my trumpet and how you could get your mouth on it with the intention of tooting it, aren't you? Yes, well, You can just keep your glistening, moist, enticing lips off my trumpet until I'm ready. And now, who the hell knows what I'm going to talk about in this episode? I know I certainly don't. Anyway, now I think we should all experience another day in paradise together. Also, I just realised this is the oldest I've ever been. It's not even my birthday or anything. I'm just older now than I was before, and that's not something that happens every day. This, on the other hand, is something that happens every day. I call these guys slithering slonks, or gutter-grovelling gooch gobblers, and because there's more than one, it's a gaggle of gutter-grovelling gooch gobblers, and they're another of the scab skarken, and before skarkification, this one's name was Brandon Stultus Turnip. I often think of this one as mother's dog, because he just slobbers unintelligibly at your heels, and then out of the blue he'll just crack you on the shin bone for no good reason. That's the nature of this beast. He's an ex-pugilist, and that's why he can't walk, a few too many belts in the brain bucket when he was upright. One of the more detestable scabs, he is very sneaky in nature and registers 0 on the Richter scale of intelligence. And now, having introduced this character's name, I feel I should go a little deeper into the meaning of the name. The name Brandon is of English origin, and it means a broom-covered hill. And if you take the time to look that up, you'll find that it is an actual thing. So yeah, Brandon, broom-covered hill. And you'd have to wonder, what the fuck was his mother thinking on the day of his birth? I think it may have gone something like this. My son means so much to me that I'm going to name him after that hill over there that's covered in brooms. That way, everyone who knows him will be aware of his great broomiferous stature. And as to why there are hills in England that are covered in brooms that people name their children after, I'll leave that for you to fathom. Right now, I'm going to move on to his second name, Stultus. The literal translation from Latin is stupid. And you can look that one up too. And turnip, well, that's just a vegetable whose only purpose in life is as livestock fodder. So a rough translation of his name would sound like this: Brandon Stultus Turnip, stupid, stupid, stupid. But I prefer to say it like this: Brandon Stultus Turnip, a broom-covered hill of turnipuous stupidity. Now that's saying something. Turnipuous is a word of grassy beans origin, and it relates to a level of stupidity that renders you so stupid that you have no useful function on this planet, and so should be erased from this state of physical existence, or turnipinated. I'll explain the word turnipinated shortly, but first I want to finish my rant about turnipuous stupidity. Because basically there is stupidity, and then there is turnipuous stupidity, which is so stupid that your level of stupidity can only be measured against that of a turnip, and the turnip would win. And turnips are stupid. Therefore, any person who is of turnipuous stupidity is required to suffer the same fate, which is of course turnipination. So apparently Brandon is one of turnipuous stupidity, and so his entire ancestry should probably be turnipinated. Now, turnipinated is another grassy beans original word, which describes what you do to a turnip in order to terminate its state of absolute stupid uselessness. And now, before I go any further, I have to say a couple of things that I will be adding to each video in the future, starting with this one. Firstly, make sure that you actually read all the scrolling text that I parade over the screen. I know some of it's pretty blathery, but sometimes it does say important stuff. And secondly, it's important that you watch all my videos in order, because each subsequent video often makes reference back to other earlier videos. And if you haven't watched those earlier videos, the one you're watching now will make very little sense. So anyway, back to Brandon Turnip for a while. Just like all the other skark, I have a few names that I call him, and just to be clear, I only give the scab skarken these irksome names. The others are my friends, or were my friends once, and I'll only refer to them with terms of endearment, even though I know I still have to kill them. So some of the other names that I call Brandon, you've heard the first two, so the others are skulking scrotsmudge, crawling cockmunch, and have a go at this one if you can, clambering cock-cluttered clusterfuck. Say that 3 times fast. There's others, but that'll do for a while. And just in case you hadn't caught on, I'm still going through the identification of the skarken as from the last episode. And also going on the title of this episode, among other things that I'd said during this episode, you should have gleaned the fact that I refer to this place as paradise. I do that for the comedic irony and nothing more. Well, get a load of this. A bee coming in at a low approach, and pow, 1 clout on the snout, and he's out. Although this looks more to me like a wasp than a bee. Either way, they carry honey, and I'm having it. I'm carving up a baby bumblebee. Won't my mommy... Okay, now, if you'll recall from the sonnet at the beginning of the video, I said that I was going to explain who was to blame for my being in this place. Well, there she is, right on cue. Yes, it's that scrawny, snivelling sucksow that was to blame. I introduced her to you in the last episode, so you'll remember that her name was Mariah Alvina. And I also told you that she caused a lot of trouble in her time because she was the leader of a minor mutiny in the past. And look just there, she's come prepared and appeared just there with a pair of bear. That's not fair, bringing a spare. Fuck it, I don't care. She's a big fat bitch anyway. But now I'm going to do some more spit-spraying talk about her and the part she played in landing not only Hickory in this place, but numerous others as well, including herself, because the story is the same for every gamer playing 7 days, according to my law that is. Alvina was the instigator and the perpetrator of a treacherous act in the past which involved a dozen or so other breakaway free radicals. So that's right, yes, that does make them radical free radicals. Big whoop. However, it was nearing the end of the year 2049 when Alvina assembled her team. Their mission, if they chose to accept it, was to destroy the temporal swing equipment. But why, I hear you ask? Aren't these dozen or so people who joined Alvina supposed to be dedicated members of the Free Radicals? And the answer to your question, of course, is why do I keep making you ask me these outrageous questions? But that wasn't really an answer, was it? So the actual answer to your question is, have you been paying any attention at all? Seriously, sometimes I think I could throw a crocodile's face at you, and you wouldn't even see it coming. So pay attention. And yes, they were all dedicated members of the Free Radicals, which means that they were also S-plasma enhanced. Most people believe that the S-plasma enhancement somehow made you reliant on the temporal swing equipment for survival. So why would they destroy something that they themselves need to survive? It's quite simple. There was a common misconception about the temporal swing equipment. The temporal swing equipment was invented shortly after the discovery of the temporal swing, and the temporal swing was discovered as a result of the development of the S-plasma, and the S-plasma was only made possible because of the creation of the quantum computing nodes. So that misconception about the temporal swing equipment being crucial to survival was born from the fact that all these things seemed to be connected because they all arose out of the same soupy cauldron of human endeavours at around the same time. So the idea was that once the temporal swing equipment was destroyed, the entire free radical movement would be wiped out. But the simple fact is that it is not so. The temporal swing equipment and the S-plasma have absolutely no bearing on one another, other than their common utilization of the temporal field. Now, I think things may have gotten a little cluttered there, so I might back up a little and comb through some of those events with a little more clarity. And just one more minor detail before I declutter that other stuff. You may or may not have realized it, but the free radical scientists have now been born. If you'll recall from episode 1 and again in episode 3, I stated their birthdays as being the 22nd of October 2020. That date has now recently passed. Ergo, the free radical scientists have now been born. Of course, nobody's going to know about it for a time yet because they don't draw attention to themselves until their radical freedom ideals start to gain acceptance, which isn't for another 23 or so years yet. But just before I go any further, I want to comment on Hickory's doings in the garden here. And this is just a quick demonstration of how just another day in paradise can fuck you around. It started with a hole in the garden where Hickory was planting blueberries. Of course, Hickory needs soil to fill the hole, but guess what? Hickory has no soil, so a quick trip to the inside-outside box for soil. See if you can guess why I call it the inside-outside box. And now back to the garden to fill in the hole. But now that the hole's filled, the garden row is untilled. Hickory needs a hoe to till the soil, but guess what? Hickory has no hoe. So, a quick trip back to the inside-outside box for a hoe to till the soil. Back to the garden. And now I'll just put this hoe in my hands, and now I'm going to use the crap out of it. No, the hoe is broken. What an absolute slut. Okay, now the plan is to scrap the old hoe and make a new one. Oh, fair sucker the sav. Need wood to make a hoe. Hickory has no wood. So this time, it's a trip to the kill cage to get the wood. And yes, I know there was wood in the inside-outside box, but fuck you, that's what. You see, you have to realise something about me, the gamer. I'm extraordinarily stupid. And that's not turnipiously stupid, that's extraordinarily stupid, which is still eons smarter than turnipious stupidity. So, Hickory's got the wood, made the hoe, and back in the garden to till the soil. OMG. Have you noticed something stupid happening here? Who'd believe it? I'm using the hoe up the fuck side down. Digging instead of tilling. Good God, that puts me one step closer to turnipious stupidity. And finally, now we can plant some bloobs. Oh, duh, that's short for blueberries, knuckfuckle. But now I have to get back to clearing up that confusion about the temporal swing and shit. And just to dispel any preconception on your part that some prophet somewhere foretold of these scientists as the great ones who will save all of humanity from self-annihilation, no, they are not prophesied great ones. There is no such prophecy in my story. Get a load of the bee in the distance. You reckon I can get him from here? Yes! I'm so awesome. I can kick the jump out of a fucking wallaby from over on the next hill while I'm lying face down and my head tied between my legs. That's how good I am. You should spend some time thinking about how good I am while I get back to the story. A lot of myths, legends, stories and chronicles all tell of a great prophesied saviour of the people. I do no such thing. I am nothing if not fluctuant, and that word was fluctuant, not flatulent. Although I am very flatulent. But everything that you think you would expect to hear in this story, you won't. And everything that you think you would expect to not hear in this story, you will. Oh, somebody farted. I wonder if it could have been me. Anyway, if there's one thing I love presenting to my hordes of adoring fans, it's that. Fart fumes, yes, for sure, but even more so. Bewildering, pointless, and unintelligible rhetoric. So while I'm dealing with that pungent-looking corpulent colossus over in the distance, I think I'll just keep talking right through the execution. I'll say stuff about cops in a little while. So now that I've been orally gratified all over that last bit of meaningless rhetoric, I think I'll do some more dazzling 7 Days to Die diary dialogue of Hickory Diamond. And I think the topic will be Mariah Alvina and why she is such a rancid slime-curdling cunt. And just so you know, she was born in 2013, May 11. So she's living among us right now. True, she's only 7 years old at the moment, but just in case you didn't know or hadn't thought about it, plenty of right royal bitches were once 7 years old. So don't be lulled into a false sense of security thinking that she's harmless. Of course, nobody knows who she is or where she lives because I've changed all the actual details for the story. You do know that I can't give people's actual names and such, right? But I can describe them in as much abominable detail as I want to, though. That way, only those who know who I'm talking about will know who I'm talking about. Of course, I'm not actually talking about any particular person or place, because of my standard disclaimer that I have in place. It goes like this, and I'm going to let Hal read this. His voice is much more official and sexy than mine.
Disclaimer. Any names, characters, places and incidents mentioned in this spectacular story are either products of the author's amazing imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locations or persons living or dead is entirely coincidental.
You see? Entirely coincidental. And that was my computer's text-to-voice personality. It's called HAL, H-A-L, which is likely to be in reference to the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. But it's not that, it's this. I did say earlier that I was going to back up and unclutter some of that other stuff. So to do that, I'm going to back right up to the beginning and go through the timeline point by point as things happened. There were 10 major events. Event 1, 1979, they started mining on the moon. Event 2, early 2002, 2 black holes collided and a third smaller one was slung towards our solar system. Event 3, October 2020, 4 exceptional scientists were born. Event 4, 2021, the gravity waves from those black holes passed through our solar system. Event 5, 2044, was the year that the world heard for the first time 3 new scientific terms: quantum computing nodes, bionomites, and S-plasma. Event 6, the very next year, 2045, the temporal swing was discovered. Event 7, later that same year, 2045, the temporal swing equipment was invented. Event 8, December the next year, that previous small black hole passed between the Earth and the Moon. Event 9, one word, war. Event 10, Halley's Comet rounded the Sun and belly flopped into the Moon. Those were the 10 most major events. There were plenty of other events that happened as well. Events like Karen wanting to talk to the manager, the golden goose refusing to leave the White House, beanie toys forcing people out of their homes, you know, all that day-to-day stuff that I don't bother to mention because they're too intolerably tedious. Oh, fuck. Bitch, can you just take a fuck-off pill and choke on it? Filthy slag maggot. And now I'll come back to this, because this seems like as good a time as any to talk about the cops. Because there's one right there, and I'm going to annihilate him. But while I'm doing that, I'll tell you this story. To start with, he's no cop. He was impersonating a cop by wearing a crappy police uniform on the night. He is one of Elvina's recruits, and so he is a scab. And now I'll explain to you the reason the cops explode. This only exists in my version of the law. You won't find a reason in the original version of the law. If you'll have a look at this still shot, you'll see a scar on his belly and a bulge right here. That's a grenade. Real cops don't carry grenades. This guy is no cop. And a perfectly reasonable question here would be, why the scar and why is the grenade under his skin? That is all to do with what happened on the night, which I will get to. But first, a synopsis on cops. You've heard me call them waddle trotters, but I also like to give them a little bit of a Latin legacy, and that would sound a little bit like this. Corpulus coppus eruptus, meaning corpulus fat, coppus, cop, eruptus exploding. So, an exploding fat cop. And for all you people out there with a dirty mind like me, this is nothing to do with coitus interruptus. This is purely corpulus coppus eruptus. Nothing dirty about that, although they are pungently dirty. But if you like this Latin thing, then you could go a little bit deeper, and you could include their habit of belching, and call them bilious corpulus coppus eruptus. And if you're going to include the belching, then you might as well include their projectile vomiting trait as well, which would then be ruminous. So now you have ruminous bilious corpulus coppus eruptus. And not forgetting, of course, just how plain horrible they are, which is horrendous. So, horrendous ruminus bilius corpulus corpus eruptus. And God, they are just so ugly, which would be hideous. So then we would have hideous horrendous ruminus bilius corpulus corpus eruptus, and they're also pretty annoying, so that's obnoxious, which then becomes obnoxious hideous horrendous ruminus bilius corpulus corpus eruptus. And we can't stop there because they are just so detestable and offensive. So that's odious, making it odious obnoxious hideous horrendous ruminus bilius corpulus corpus eruptus, and they're just plain outright annoying. So that's tedious, giving us tedious, odious, obnoxious, hideous, horrendous, ruminus, bilious, corpulus, corpus, eruptus. And I don't want to push my luck too far here, but they are of doubtful authenticity, and that's spurious, giving us spurious, tedious, odious, obnoxious, hideous, horrendous, ruminus, bilious, corpulus, corpus, eruptus. And there are just so many of them, which is multitudinous. So here we go again. Multitudinous, spurious, tedious, odious, obnoxious, hideous, horrendous, ruminus, bilious, corpulus, corpus, eruptus. And they are pretty fucking dangerous, but I'm not even going to try to add that, because I could end up doing myself a mischief. And that would be mischievous, not mischievous. No such word as mischievous. And the fact that some people think that mischievous is a word is quite rightly ludicrous. And that's just hilarious. And I'm going to stop now before I become monotonous. And what to do now? Get rid of these dregs as the first order of business, and wielding my trusty old barbed wire billy bat, this should take no time at all. It's 1 down, 2 down, and 3 down. What did I tell you? No time at all. Trusty old barbed wire billy bat. Not as good as the enhanced prickle stick, but still good. And now that colossal cunt has just made me bleed. I did not want to be bleeding right now. This is quite an irritating development. So now I won't be talking about the cops, because that cunt just pissed me off a bit. So I'll go back to talking about that other stuff. I had just listed the 10 major events, so after the 10th event, the Halley's Comet moon entanglement, there was bedlam, chaos and devastation as pieces of the moon rained down on the Earth, demolishing massive areas of land with every strike. Strike after strike, day after day, for almost the next 2 years. At the end of it all, the Earth was left a shattered, smouldering relic, and almost completely unrecognisable as Earth. Ah, this cop, this wayward, ruptured anal ramrod, really starting to twist my tits. Ugh, how dirty was that? Never heard anyone die so sloppily. Fat, splattering turd slag. I didn't even like him. So, anyway, I think I'll talk about the cops some more when I'm not quite so pissed off at them. Meanwhile, I'll get back to the aftermath of the war and the meteor shower of moon pieces. This ongoing barrage began to slow around the middle of the year 2049. So by the end of that year, any moon fragments that hadn't hit Earth were gradually just disappearing into the ebony depths of endless space, and all went quiet on Earth. It was during this time, when things were starting to quiet down, that Maria put her plan into action. She assembled her team in 2 groups, one group to go to each of the poles, North Pole and South Pole. And why were they going to the poles? Because that's where the hubs for the temporal swing equipment were. You see, it'd be almost impossible for Maria to destroy all the temporal swing equipment, because there were temporal swing stations all over the planet. But the temporal stations were inconsequential. They only performed the same function as that of train or bus stations. They were where people arrived and departed from when travelling over the temporal swing. The hubs, however, were the mainstay of the system. The hubs receive, carry and boost the temporal signal. So taking out the stations would have had little effect on anything. However, taking out the hubs meant that the stations would be rendered useless, which then makes travel over the temporal swing impossible. And now this is where the misconception about the temporal swing equipment comes in. Mariah and all of her crew were members of the Free Radical movement. They all knew that destroying the hubs would stop travel, at least until the hubs could be repaired. And that would prove to be a monumental challenge, because this was in a time just after massive annihilation events on Earth. So parts and resources were basically non-existent. However, the repair job did happen. It just took a long time. And that, regrettably, is where I'm going to have to leave this episode. I'll pick up from here in the next episode. But for now, I'll bid you adieu, and leave you with one final thought. A quote by Jim Rohn. Be good to your body. It's the only place you have to live. Salsac, share and like, subscribe and comment, or prepare to die. You have 7 days.